Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Chocolate Travels. I'm Joseph with Bean to Bar World, and I'm here with Marco and Aurelio from Cacao Life. Hi, guys. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Excellent. So, when did you start your business, Cacao Life? What did you guys do before delving into the world of cacao and chocolate?
Cacao Life. So Amazon Specialties is the mother company. Cacao Life is the brand. We started this in at the end of 2016, 2017. Prior to that, and this was I was dragged into this by my good friend, old friend Aurelio, as he's been in this industry, in the cacao industry, let's just say, since 2007 or so.
Okay.
So we essentially started a nonprofit organization, or he did, in about that time frame. Right after university, going into the jungle. The purpose of it was doing social and educational projects out in two communities in the northern Amazonas departments of or sections of Peru.
Mm,
Um, you fast forward a little bit. What the purpose of these was basically working with the communities, which are all farmers, to try to make their life better, more sustainable,
mm.
get better products of whatever they're doing, way of life, etc. Right?
Okay.
Now, as we fast forward, one of the things that they were coming with better quality products is the farmers out there, they're not salespeople. They have no idea how
Right.
to sell it for more money, how
Yeah.
to be able to regain some of that investment that they're doing, that extra work that they're doing for better quality back into their own pocket.
Hmm.
When this doesn't occur, they either revert back to doing things older ways, easier ways, maybe not as sustainable for the environment, for themselves, etc.
Mm.
And you lose that uh, um, I guess excellence that they could be getting.
Right.
So one of the things that we started doing for them was, or Aurelio, literally, like Aurelio was putting cacao pods and cacao beans in the pickup truck in the jungle, and then traversing through the Andes and finding a market for them for the better quality beans, and then
Mm-hmm.
translating this amount back, it's translating the extra amount back to the farmers. So in essence, paying the farmers more, which is what they deserve for a better quality product,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Since then, this is a long time ago now. 10 years later, we have a manufacturing plant in the south of Lima, in Mala, where we process the cacao into various derivatives as well and do other products. We don't just work with cacao, we also work with a variety of other Peruvian superfoods.
Okay.
Our purpose really is to help make the best quality products possible in a sustainable manner, ethically, of
Mm.
course, as always. And as you know, as we've noticed, the farmers aren't just growing. We like to work with farmers, usually small scale co-ops, medium-sized small co-ops or associations. And these guys are always not just farming one thing. It's almost like it's a regenerative
Right.
process. They're farming many different things.
Right.
Something that makes the environment reach a homeostasis, so to speak.
Mm.
So if we can actually find placements of all of the products that are being farmed, it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot of research decades ago that goes into this idea of intercropping different plants, creating a better environment where you can harvest what you need, but also create a good environment for everything that's living there, right?
And not
So,
just that, but animals and all this.
right.
An excellent movie or documentary on this is the biggest little farm, or the littlest big farm. I can't remember.
Mm.
It's that used to be on Netflix, but I'm not sure you guys can find it. It's unbelievably, it's a great documentary,
Yeah.
and it talks exactly, they do this in California,
Hmm.
so it's
Hmm.
great.
Aurelio, what was your drive to do this work to begin with it years and years ago?
That's a good question. Well, I was raised here in Lima and I hated the city, you know. Since I was really young, I only wanted to get out of the main
Really?
city here.
Mm.
So since I was in high school, actually, there was an opening for taking donations to a few native and farming communities in the Amazon, in cuencas of the river Amazonas, Orosa, Arambasa, and Yanashi, different native communities in this area. It's in the northern Amazon,
Mm.
and I didn't doubt to put my name and go. I was 16 years old, something like that, and And this place was really, really isolated, you know. There was no government over there. There was no police, no hospitals, nothing.
Wow.
Just a few, and this is funny because we're talking to a Canadian channel. So there was a Canadian school in the middle of the
Oh,
jungle.
really?
Wow. It was run by a priest, a Canadian priest from Quebec. Ivan Boucher was his name, I remember. So we visited this school and we brought donations, mostly medicines, because people die of infection. It's ridiculous, you know. And it was the year 2004, and people were dying of infection because they didn't have antibiotics. So we brought a few donations that were really impactful at the time, and after this, we didn't want to just keep on giving things. We want to teach them to do something a lot more useful, something that could be sustainable, that could be a source of income for them on the long run.
Yeah.
And the usual thing that people do in the middle of the jungle right now is just burn everything, take the trees and sell the trees, sell all the wood, and then put grass and cattle, a lot of cattle. So that's what's ruining the rainforest right now. So what we thought at the moment was, okay, what can we do? What can we teach the farmers to farm that is more sustainable, that could be sustainable on the long run? And for context, it's very important for people to know how these communities work. Most of the native communities, they used to travel around the jungle. They wouldn't be stable in one place. Right. Naturally, for thousands of years, these native communities, they move from one place to the other. So they take all the resources around in the forest in one area, then move to another one, and then take all the resources, fish the rivers, hunt all the animals, take the fruits from the trees, and then move to another area, and then to another, and then to another, and then to another, and then to another. And a few years later, they come back to the first place they were, and it's already recuperated, right? Because of all the natural regeneration of the rainforest, of the jungle. So after the el caucho, the rubber tree. After the rubber tree crisis, the jungle became a lot more populated. And after a few years after the rubber crisis, the government started acknowledging people in the jungle as population of Peru. And they wanted to ask them to stay in one place for the government to be able to put schools or to put hospitals around. So people stopped migrating and they stayed in one place. So they started taking all the resources around in one area, then like opening loops, you know, and until there's nothing alive around, you know. They overfished the rivers, they took all the trees, all the valuable trees down. So it's
right, because they're doing what
places
they did, but in a different context, which didn't work the same way, right?
Well, they weren't farmers.
Yeah,
exactly.
People in the jungle have never been farmers.
Yeah,
no,
or only in several like organized places that are in the eyebrow of the jungle. We call it the places that are between the jungle and the mountains, the Andes.
Yeah.
The Andes. So these people had to learn to become farmers, and that's the thing. It's a very difficult thing to teach people that were hunters and gatherers for thousands of years to start farming and do it in a sustainable way. It's very difficult, and a lot of people have learned how to do it, but a lot of communities, they haven't. So I started going into more developed places in the jungle and learn all about coffee, cacao, reforestation, fish farming, all about different kinds of sustainable business in the jungle, and then make manuals and models of fish farms, and then bring these models and these manuals to the native communities and try and teach them how to make them. So
without getting too much into it, how receptive were people in general to this?
Well, as long as they were getting help, they were very open. The thing is that they don't know where to start, and they haven't had access for a lot of education. So it's and they're very isolated. So at this time, we're talking about 2007 approximately, 2007, 2008. There was no internet. There was only one phone, in a few towns, and a few towns they didn't have a phone. So it was funny because I would call to for example, David Vilches, which was the leader of one of the towns. I called the only phone in the town, and like a little girl will answer and tell me, who are you calling to? And I'm calling to David Vilches. And she'll go, okay, call back in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So she will go running around to try to find David, like knock his door or go to his farm, find him and bring him to the booth so I can call again and get connected with them. It was very far away. So when I was traveling to these areas, I would stay. They had like a little school that had only one room, and I would stay and sleep on the floor for weeks. And try to help them build fish farms and plant them. That's when I actually knew cacao for the first time. I haven't seen at the time in 2005. I have never even heard about cacao.
So growing up in Lima, in the city, never encountered
Lima is
it.
in the city, is in the coast, in front of the sea. There's no jungle here, you know.
No, there's a big
And,
association between chocolate and cacao.
Oh yeah, yeah, but it was crazy because I was like in the middle of the rainforest and I was eating this beautiful yellow fruit, and they were like that looked like a papaya, like between a papaya and a mango, and these guys were opening and sucking on the seeds, and I tried it, was amazed, like what is this, you know?
Yeah.
And the guys told me it's cacao. I was like, what's cacao? The thing, chocolate. It's like the source for chocolate.
Yeah.
I was like, isn't chocolate made out of milk or hazelnuts or
Interesting.
anything else but cacao? Because I've never seen, by that time I had never seen a pot of cacao or something related to cacao being displayed on the labels.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's interesting to me too, because you're not the only one who grew up in cacao growing regions. And they live in the cities, never encountered cacao, had no idea that cacao grows there, and that it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, the story of Peru, sadly, is that we have been like we've always been looking to the sea, and giving our back to the jungle, you know. So Peru is like a very flat, very flat desert in front of the sea. Then you have the Andes, which is very difficult. It's very difficult to go through the Andes and to get to the jungle because all in between the jungle and the Andes is a big piece of mountains with trees, you know. So it's very difficult to go through. So
there's only let me say something. So up to about 1970, there's only about I think 3 passes to go into the jungle. So if you think Peru as a map, like this is kind of crude, but think of it as like a peanut shape, vertically, right? So it's on the Pacific. The entire side of one coast on the Pacific is a desert, as Aurelio says, and then it's literally divided right down the middle by the Andes Mountains. And this is like a massive wall. There's barely any communication onto the Amazon, and until about 1970s, there's only 3 roads that go in on a span of vertically almost 3,000 kilometers. There's only 3 roads that have access into the jungle. So
and that's correct. Yeah, and they're always being destroyed. Actually, we call it huaicos. So you have landslides, like huge landslides that will destroy the roads. So it was very difficult to communicate. One story that I always tell, because this is interesting for people that don't know the Peruvian history, is that my great grandfather, he was a prefect of Iquitos. Iquitos is the capital of Loreto. Loreto is this the department in the middle of the jungle that has a frontier with Colombia and Ecuador and Brazil. So he was the prefect of Iquitos. So how would he go to Iquitos? He would take a boat in Callao and go all the way around through Chile, then Brazil.
Callao is basically in Lima, just so you understand.
In Lima.
So Callao is on the coast of Peru.
It's the main port of Peru.
Yeah, the main port of Peru, right on the coast, right by Lima.
So he will go around all South America and then go into the delta of the Amazon River, then go all the way through Brazil, and it will take months for him to get to Iquitos.
That's incredible.
That's how isolated the jungle, the Peruvian jungle, was from the rest of Peru. You know, so to get to certain places until now, still to get to some places in the Peruvian jungle, it's easier to go from Brazil than to go from Peru.
Do you know like what is the population on that other side of the Andes there in Peru? Is it very, very small, or
well, it's growing fast. It's growing fast. It's obviously the least populated part of Peru, the jungle, but it's growing fast because, well, mainly because of climate change is affecting a lot of populations in the Andes. So right now we have very tough droughts in the Andes. So a lot of people are looking for better farming land or places to raise their children in a healthier way. You know, if you have a drought in the middle of the Andes, there's no way that your cattle will be able to drink water, and it's like we have had thousands of animals die in the middle of the Andes because of these droughts, because of climate change. So a lot of people are moving right now to the jungle, and it's becoming it's getting populated very fast.
Do these communities that are more isolated from the main part of Peru, do they maybe connect more with the other countries that are on that side? You know, Brazil.
For a long time, yes. For a long time they were, yes.
More connection that way.
A lot, yeah. There's a big influence in, for example, in Iquitos, there's a big Brazilian influence. So a lot of people, I remember some of the people that I met in the first trip, and I won't forget their names like ever. One of the guys was named Edinho, which is a very, very Brazilian name, you know. And there are like details of Brazilian culture that are being incorporated in the Iquitos culture because of all the things that are being exported from Brazil to the Peruvian jungle, which is a lot easier than sending things all the way across the Andes, then take them to a river that could be navigated until you get to Iquitos, because there are no roads to Iquitos. Yeah. Wow. And it's the biggest city in the jungle, or one of the biggest cities in the jungle. Yeah. So it's one of the most isolated places in the world. It's one of the only places in the world. The Amazon rainforest is one of the only places in the world where you still have uncontacted communities.
Yeah, I've heard of that. So
people that they decide to keep themselves away from contact with other peoples, from civilization. Yes, and they if you get in contact with them, you're risking their whole life because
their immune system is not what it used to be. They've never been around people. So yeah.
Right. You talked a lot about your connection to cacao and how it all started. We kind of have an idea of that. And you sort of touched on this, but let's tackle it a bit more directly. How can your customers, whether they're chocolate makers or the general public, because you do sell products out to the public as well, how can they be assured that your products are not linked to unethical treatment of farmers or people in Peru? How can they see that transparency? How can they come to understand that with your company?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, exactly. we trade direct with the farmers. We go visit them. We know where they are. We know the co-ops. We know everybody in the Peruvian cacao world.
And I think I saw on your website that you have a lot of profiles of the different regions.
Yeah. So and not only that, but we, like, for example, with some of our clients like Castronovo or Fruition, we have WhatsApp groups where we're like, hey, here we are, like, you know, here's the cacao, like, so they see exactly the whole process of us, let's say, obtaining cacao, processing it, and going all the way through the process of exporting it as well, right? So we're very, very transparent and have nothing to hide in that sense. We're not like you know, we are, as Aurelio said, we're direct source. And for many of these farmers or origins, not only that, but Aurelio is also an expert in post-harvest processing. So he's gone to these farms, he's gone to these things and helped them optimize their processing. That's the goal here, right? Like it is helping them make better products. So it's kind of hard, like, how do I prove it to you? Like, I mean,
not to me, but to the general public, because especially nowadays people get a bit disillusioned by the whole idea of fair trade, and everybody says everything they sell is ethical, but some people want a little bit more, something more tangible,
Yeah. So one of the things that Marco and I always say is that we don't usually like certifications because sometimes they do exactly the opposite that they are supposed to do. So how much does it cost to get a fair trade certification? It is very expensive. So if a farmer can't pay for a fair trade certification, then how is it fair?
Yeah.
You know, you're just putting more obstacles in a Porter chart, like it's an obstacle for getting into a business. You're putting more distance in between the farmer and the
Right.
chocolate maker.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do is shorten that distance. We want to make it closer. And that's what we try to do all the time. So for us, there's a lot of things that we do. We help the farmers. Actually, I'm an agro-industrial engineer, and I've been working with co-ops for a long time. And also, I'm a chocolate taster. I've been a chocolate taster for the International Institute for Chocolate and Cacao Tasting, and from the International Chocolate Awards. And I've been part of the jury of the Peruvian Chocolate Show here for 5 years. And we also have a chocolate school. So we are teaching a lot of different farmers and co-ops how to add value to the raw materials so that they don't stay just as a source of raw materials. You know, we are always helping them and teaching them how to improve. We are also importing machines to Peru. We represent premier chocolate refiners here in Peru. And what we're trying to do is get machines that are really good and not as expensive as other different kinds of machines. So more people can get easily into the chocolate making world, because it's a paradox that Peru is still a chocolate importing country, even though we are exporters of cacao.
Exporting some of the best cacao in the world.
Exactly. How can we be a chocolate importing country if we are the source of the most genetically diverse cacaos in the world? So we have like 20 something different origins of Peruvian cacao. And as Peruvian cacao has the most genetic diversity in the world by studies of Biodiversity International that have been demonstrated that the country that has the most biodiversity of cacao in the world is Peru. That means that we are right now the source of the biggest diversity of cacao in the world as a company, because we have more co-ops and more diversity of cacao than any other company in the world.
I mean, when we said we're not fans of certifications, it's more than anything specifically fair trade certifications. Does that mean we're not paying our farmers fairly? Or absolutely not. And a lot of the times we're paying double or even more than that.
Yeah.
Why is this important to understand? Farmers in Peru, they're small. The average acreage per farmer in Peru is only 1.5 acres. This isn't Brazil, this isn't Mexico or other places that have some farmers have hundreds and sometimes even thousands of acres. Just imagine that. 1.5 acres per family, per farmer. Okay. The average amount of cacao that grows on an acre is roughly 400 to 600 kilos per year. That's not very much, specifically, depending on the variety. Not very much money. So now, when you're looking for fair trade certification, everybody on the chain has to be fair trade certified. What does that mean? We have to be fair trade certified? That's no problem. We can do that, no problem. But that also means that we have to buy from a farmer or a group of farmers or a co-op or an association of farmers that is also fair trade certified. Now, the problem with this is the following. There is some co-ops in Peru that are fairly large, and they have hundreds of farmers that are joining that. They get that fair trade certification, and it covers the entire amount of farmers. What happens to the small scale farmers? What happens to the co-ops that are very, very small, medium-sized co-ops that don't have a lot of farmers in their association? They can never, ever afford a certification for fair trade, which, by the way, is about $6,000 to $9,000 US per year. I'll give you another example. We work with an association of women, Siriari, Warmi Sinani, in the middle of the jungle where there's 16 or 18 women farmers here. I can tell you it's organic. It's not certified. They're in the middle of the jungle.
They make great cacao.
The cacao's amazing. They can never be certified organic. They can never be certified fair trade because they can never afford it. If you break down the math, it would be like almost all of their margins, it goes towards certification. It is completely unfair, right? Now, there are other certifications, like there's a certification in Peru for small scale farmers that costs maybe $200, $300. But if we were to get that, or they were to get that, it's still not recognized by a lot of the international fair trade international, fair for life. All of these, they don't recognize these kind of small, let's say, national certifications. But it's the most fair out of all of them. So this is anyway, that's I just wanted
And not
to
just
mention
that
that
is
because I don't think a lot of
the
people know that.
it's also the fact that a lot of fair trade certified cacao is not synonymous with quality at all. You know, a lot of it is
Exactly.
not. So, you know, what I tell my customers and people who come to my tastings is that if they use that as if that's your filter, fair trade certification, you're canceling out some of the best cacao in the world. And you know, this certification, like you guys said, it costs the farmers a lot of money. Isn't it better to put the money back in your pockets and the pockets of the farmers so that the ones who are making the difference are the ones who are growing, right? That's where it needs to be. So I
Mm.
think a lot of people don't understand that these days. I think Fairtrade has done a good job of making people aware of certain things, but it's falling short. And I think what you guys are doing, what a lot of other people in the cacao industry are starting to do, is so much better, but people don't know it yet, right? They don't understand that yet. So I'm glad
Yeah,
you guys.
and
Yeah.
sometimes it's a lot easier to pay a higher price to the farmers if we don't have to pay for the certifications. We can give that money to the farmers of giving it to the
Right.
certification company.
Yeah.
You know,
300, a few
it's a
hundred
lot
US
better.
dollars goes a long way, I'm sure, in Peru.
A
Oh,
long way.
oh my goodness.
Makes a
Like
big
you
Yeah,
wouldn't
difference in the
believe.
world. Yeah. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's
yeah.
a very good point. I'm glad you guys brought that up, and that's something that people need to hear more about. So yeah, I think that's wonderful. Do you guys ever do, or you plan to do any sort of videos or more media to kind of give people insight of like who's behind growing the farm, the cacao?
Yeah,
Yeah, we are
absolutely.
just starting doing
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
We've created so we're going in April. We you know because let's say end of last year between October and December or maybe even let's say September and November I had 5 6 different chocolate makers ask me like, hey, when are you guys doing an origin trip? I want to go. And I had like so many of them ask me roughly around the same time. So I said, okay, you know what, we've gone obviously to the jungle with clients before. It's very costly. It's time consuming, and Aurelio and I are incredibly, busy running a business. But we do it with certain clients that are buying, etc. And then we thought, okay, let's just join it all together and do it as a big group. So we're actually now going April 13th. We're going into the Cusco area, Quillabamba area, with 16 groups, and we'll
Chocolate
film it.
makers.
Yeah, we'll
Nice.
film it. It's going to be amazing.
Oh,
And
wow.
later, actually, Joseph, I'll send you a link. Well, one of our clients is Lucid Chocolatier from New Zealand. In 2022, he won Best Chocolate Maker in New Zealand.
I think I saw
He
that
was,
video. You had a video online.
oh yeah, okay, perfect,
I
exactly.
saw
So
that,
that's
yeah.
like one of the documentaries that he commissioned
Yeah.
when we were on this trip. It's a nice little beautiful. So
And
hopefully we'll do that again.
that's what's so wonderful about the 21st century is, you know, you guys can bring your phones and cameras, whatever, and start educating. You just turn it on and people will, you know, start watching it and learning. And, you know, it's something that I think is very necessary in the craft chocolate world to encourage that idea of transparency, reassuring people. You know, they see it for their own eyes. They see you talking to the farmers, they hear
Absolutely.
the farmers talk. So I think that's incredible. I think we need to see a lot more of that. So it's nice to hear you guys are doing that.
Sorry, I was
Yeah,
just gonna say,
go
like,
ahead.
if we're hoping that this becomes a norm, like if we could do this every year, and one of the chocolate makers, I can't remember, maybe it was you or somebody else said, like, what if like just the regular Joe who's not a chocolate maker? Oh, maybe actually, I think this was maybe at Vince, my buddy at Kasama. I think he mentioned like if I'm going on this trip, can I also bring my clients?
Mm,
And
mm,
I thought that was a fantastic idea because for sure there's going to be some purists out there that love chocolate. And how amazing would it be if their favorite chocolate maker is like going on an origin trip and
right,
also
right.
says, by the way, like this is open also to
Mm,
fans that are
hmm.
really and like, why not? Let's do that. Let's expand
And
the
that's,
knowledge.
yeah, exactly. Because the more people that know, they're going to go back to where they're from and they're going to tell their friends, they're going to educate their family. And the family's going to be more enticed because they went there themselves, they get to learn. And the basis of growing the craft chocolate world, the bean to bar world, is educating the public. You know, it's every maker, every new business, their job is to do what they do, but also to create new customers by educating them, right? So
Yeah, and it's also a great opportunity for these communities to get their knowledge and their results out there. You know, a lot
yeah,
of these communities, sometimes native communities, sometimes farming communities, these people are very isolated. They are far away. and a lot of let's say chocolate makers or some traders, they don't recognize the labor that these guys do. They do great work. They produce some of the best cacaos in the world because they work hard and they do a very good job.
Yep.
And sometimes people don't recognize them because as they are isolated, some people like to take the credit, instead of
That's a good
crediting
point.
them
Yeah.
for the job that they have done. A lot of other traders, they want to take the credit and say, okay, this is our cacao. We are doing it. No, it's the farmers, the ones that are doing it. And yeah, we can help them. We can teach them. We can help them improve. But at the end, it's their job, is their result.
Yeah,
What
why not?
we're
It's so
showing.
easy nowadays to give them a microphone, click on the camera, you can translate from Spanish to English, and there you go. Their voice is out there. People know who they are. And a big problem of why people don't respect chocolate is because with wine, say wine, it's the grapes are growing in France. You can meet the growers and the winemaker, and there's that connection there. So you don't waste it. But chocolate is very wasteful because, first of all, nobody knows where it comes from, how it's made. And
It's hidden.
yeah, exactly.
hidden.
So
And
if
that's
you
on
buy a
purpose.
bar and this bar was made from this farmer and you saw a video of her talking, like that's going to be much more precious to a lot of people,
it is.
right?
So let me I want to add to that a little bit on two items. The hidden part, but also going back to the farmers. It's also amazing for the farmers to also meet the chocolate makers, but also meet chocolate makers that are these artisan bean to bar chocolate makers. Because one, it's bridging the gap here, right? We're shortening the huge gap that a lot of these these farmers have no idea. Like if you ask a lot of them in Peru what chocolate is, to them is Snickers, Hershey's, Nestle. Like they have no real concept of real chocolate, right? And then when you bring a chocolate maker that has won X amount of awards around the entire world, right? And he's flying in from New Zealand or he's flying in from the US, and they're tasting chocolate, which is amazing with all these amazing flavor profiles. And then you tell them like this is the cacao that's coming from your farm. You're creating this, right?
Yeah.
It is unbelievable to see this, the joy that they get from this, and it makes them more proud.
Yeah.
They will start doing a better, like they will continue to do this great job and be more fueled to continue to do that. And that also hopefully promotes the continuous sales of fine flavored cacao. Because if this doesn't occur, the cacao that they're producing is lost with essentially, big cacao, commodity cacao, industrial cacao, which brings me to my second point, which was this hidden part. It's done on purpose, the hidden part. Like, how come people don't really know where cacao, like chocolate, comes from? Well, let's call it big cacao, and you guys know which ones they are. For, last, 100 years, let's say, they've been keeping it separate on purpose so that they can control it, right? If they are promoting around the entire world, and they do, the teachings or in chef schools and pastry schools, when you go to a pastry school, chef school, you start, let's say, pastries from scratch. What do you start for chocolate making? You start from a couverture. You're starting chocolate making from chocolate. Right? Why? On purpose. Because they're sponsoring the school, and then later on, they are selling that product to all those chefs that come out of all those pastry chefs that come out of there, right?
That's such an interesting point because I started off in the chocolatier world. I was into fine chocolate, but before chocolate making, I was a chocolatier. And not to be too rude or anything, but a lot of the sales reps for a lot of these big companies, they're not the most trusting people. I'll say that, and that's an interesting point that you brought up because it is kind of true. There's a lot of this slimy stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
And it happens everywhere, even in Peru.
Yeah.
In Peru, the chef schools, we are the best food destination in the world for, I think it's 8th or 9th year in a row, because our food is great. But still, in the chef schools in Peru, people are learning chocolate making from chocolate, from couverture, from imported couvertures from Europe.
Right.
And we are exporting cheaply our great beans, and we are importing very expensively,
that's crazy,
very low quality couvertures. That's because of how ignorant we are. So we are trying to change We're trying to change our culture, and there are a lot of things that are happening right now that is helping that. So there's been this new article, this catalog of Peruvian cacaos made by Biodiversity International. These guys they have done the best genetic research of cacao in the history of the world. Like, they have had so many samples, and
over 3,000.
Yep, over
3,000
3,000
genetic
samples
samples
of genetic samples that you
genetic
have to
samples, yeah.
ship to the US or to Europe to be analyzed and to find the genetics. And what's happening here is very interesting, because now we know what's happened. Because for a long time we knew that our cacao was diverse, because we have different shapes of pots, colors of pots, different shapes of beans, sizes, but we didn't know why, and this usual description of criollo, trinitario, and forastero, this is an analysis of ecotypes that was done on a taxonomic way hundreds of years ago, and they couldn't comprehend genetic diversity. So we need to forget everything that we know and start from scratch, because all of these genetic tests are proving that we knew nothing. So now Peru has 73% of the world's genetic diversity. Wow. 73%. You go to the Amazon rainforest, and you see a native wild cacao tree. You take a leaf, send it to the laboratory. Oh, I find a new variety of cacao, a new genetic. That's happening all the time right now here in Peru. It happened to a friend of mine in Peru, and they took some pots and they planted these native cacaos in a farm, and they harvested last year. They harvested 50 kilos. So and they sent it to us. So now we are the only source in the world for the 50 kilos of Peru's cacao, which is a separate species, a separate variety of cacao.
That's amazing.
So that's happening. Yeah, that's happening all the time here. We have a huge diversity, and how do we know that human beings come from Africa? Because Africa has the biggest genetic diversity of human beings. So that's how we know that cacao comes from Peru, because we have the biggest diversity.
So that makes a good point too, right? Because we know that, or we believe that cacao did originate in northern Amazon. So this just brings up a little question here, a bit of a tangent, but with a lot of the history that we know, now we're dating back chocolate to possibly the Mayo Chinchipe. We know they're domesticating cacao in Ecuador. But a lot of people will talk a lot about the Incas and cacao and chocolate. From your knowledge, do we have connections between sort of going that far back, and cacao and the Incas and chocolate and Incas, or anything?
So chocolate, no, I'll take this one. So yeah, you have the Mayo Chinchipe Marañón civilizations, right? So
mostly Marañón.
Right?
Mostly Marañón.
Yeah, mostly Marañón. It's a very unique river, Marañón. The Marañón River, usually rivers always will flow from the mountains down the valleys into the jungle, right? Makes sense, each valley. But the Marañón River has a very large 1,500 kilometers going north-south, like going down the Andes north-south and into the
center of the Andes.
In the center of the Andes. It's very interesting. So what did that do for a lot of the communities and civilization there? It allowed trade that way, which went north-south, not into the jungle. It's very difficult to go and trade into the jungle, right? And to expand into the wild jungle. So it's very, very interesting doing the Mayo Chinchipe Marañón civilizations there. So cacao has been domesticated in let's say the north of this river when they found it. It's around 5,700 years old. There's no doubt in this. There's already been genetic testing on some remnants of cacao genetics inside pottery, inside tombs. So let's call it somewhere rounding up to 6,000 years. Now, in terms of chocolate, however, chocolate wasn't really in South America. So the chocolate really started in the Olmec portion of Guatemala, Panama, let's say that area, at about 1800 AD. So thousands of years later.
Right.
How did the chocolate get there? How did the cacao get there, actually? So What's interesting is that it looks like you said, cacao is originating in the north of Amazon, the northern Amazon basin, which is really more like North Peru, bordering a little bit of Ecuador, Venezuela, Brazil, Colombia. And
Hmm.
actually, with a new study right now, they also found another biodiversity center, which is in the south of Peru, completely within the Chuncho, Cusco area. Okay.
Mm.
Anyway, the domestication of the cacao went from the north, let's say, it looks, and it traveled across the Paso de Porcuya, which is the lowest point of the Andes in all of the Andes, which is in the
Mm.
north of Peru, at only about 2,200 meters above sea level, which allows for the trees to actually flirt. It doesn't get completely cut off by the Andes mountains, so the vegetation actually can go across, and that's
Mm.
actually also where you found civilizations, people that were trading between the Andes and the coast with the Amazon jungle. That was a trade route
Right.
where you
Six
found
6,000 years ago, it was a trade route. Yeah.
exactly, and you
Right.
found shells in the Andes, shells in the Amazon that were obtained obviously from the coast, right? You found all these things along the trade route, including, and this is how you get cacao to the coast. They were domesticating cacao and eventually trying different types, and this is why the famous, let's say, Pura White, all the cacaos that are in Pura and also in Ecuador around that area.
Mm.
That's how cacao is. Now it's kind of it's so the speculation, the theory is this: they traded the cacao traveled not by when it traveled north, it didn't travel through the land. Once it got to the coast of Peru, on the very north of Peru with Ecuador, that was a trade route by sea with a
Mm.
lot of the civilization that traveled by sea in Central America and Mexico at that
Mm.
time. There's a lot of trade with that civilization, and it looks like cacao jumped in terms of
Mm.
diversity, genetic diversity, right to the north of like where Guatemala is around there.
Right.
Okay,
The south,
it's
the
very
south of
interesting.
Mexico.
Right.
But
The
there's a
south of
jump, yes.
Mexico. Yeah. So what happens with diversity? So genetics is what tells you everything, right? The most genetic diversity, let's say it's Amazon basin, as it gets domesticated, civilizations tend to domesticate the cacao types,
To
varieties
select.
that will give them that will survive, that will give them the most fruit, and that keeps on spreading out loud, right? So then, as this genetic diversity made it into various genetics made it into the coast of Peru, and then it got traded to the Manzanillo area, let's say, there it got domesticated and spread from there. And how does it get domesticated and from that area? Well, the farmers start planting it, and whatever grows best is what they keep on planting further and further out.
Right.
They're not going to plant a type of variety that doesn't grow there anymore. They're not going to keep on trying that somewhere else. They're going to like, oh, this one works, and they keep on spreading it. So the genetic diversity, as you see, is extremely large in the Amazon basin. It narrows down a little bit as the cacao domestication occurred, to the point where it narrows down in the coast of Peru. Then the genetic diversity continues, that particular amount continues into the Manzanillo area, and then it diminishes more as it travels down further south now from
Mm.
Manzanillo area through the Central America region. So it's very interesting how if you follow the genetics, you can
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
map how it traced.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to understand and to accept this craziness that we're trying to explain when you can see the opposite maps happening in that same route. For example, I don't know if you've ever tried custard apple.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
chirimoya, we call it in Peru.
Mm.
Okay, so chirimoyas, we know now because we thought they were Peruvian, but we know that now that they were native from Central America, and they were
Mm.
traded to Peru. So in
Hmm.
Peru, we have the biggest chirimoyas in the world. So how did they get so big if you can't find native chirimoyas in Central America that are as big? So what happened is that they were traded probably from Manzanillo to the coast of Peru, where the moche culture was in nowadays Chiclayo. So you see a little spot in the coast of diversity in chirimoyas. So the seeds arrived there. And then you have chirimoyas everywhere in Peru, but there's no genetic diversity.
Hmm. Interesting.
So that
Yeah.
that means that they were brought by sea to this place, and then they selected the best chirimoyas, the ones that grew the biggest, and then they
And then
took
they
seeds from
planted that.
from those ones, and then they spread it out in the whole country. So now we have chirimoyas everywhere, and
It's
the
very
same thing
interesting.
happened with corn. So
Exactly.
Peruvian, so peoples at this time they have been trading for more than 9,000 years. There are cities in Peru, for example, in Supe, Caral city is a city that has, let's say, 5,000
5,000.
years,
Yeah.
5,500 years, something like that. And they're huge cities with calendars, with technology in canals, with different anti-seismic buildings. They are very advanced. So what's interesting for me is that we don't really know how developed were these cultures that happened so many years ago, and they were already trading. So it's difficult to affirm 100% that that was the road that Cacao took to get to Central America. But we know that there's a gap of a little less than 2,000 years in between the domestication of cacao in the Andes and the usage of cacao in Central America. We know that this gap exists. And as Marco said, it's very interesting to know that they have found a new center of diversity of cacao to the south of Peru. So now what we're concluding is that cacao evolved 10 million years ago. And it consists at the time when the Andes started growing. You know, you have the tectonic plates, and they crashed into each other, and the Andes started to go up. Before that, the Peruvian was like Peru was like a plain, like a African savanna. You know, everything was flat, and you have like patches of trees over here, flatland grass areas over there, and we had a lot of megafauna. So huge animals that would eat the whole cacao seeds, will swallow the whole cacao seeds, and then poop them somewhere else. You know, and that was the natural way for cacao to spread. So when the Andes started going up, cacao tried to survive to different valleys and different heights of the forest. And in this is the reason why you have so much diversity in Peru, because you have so many valleys going from the Andes into the jungle. So you have a lot of different isolated varieties of cacao that they have been separated for thousands of years, maybe millions of years, only by the Andes, because sometimes it's very difficult to cross from one valley to the other. So so they have been naturally isolated, and they also have been domesticated many times by many different cultures in the Peruvian Andes and Amazon. So yeah, it's very interesting what we're discovering now here about cacao, and we didn't know, you know. And these cacaos, they weren't even mentioned when they described Criollo, Trinitario, Forastero. They weren't even mentioned. Nobody knew they existed. They were like,
when it comes to the history of cacao, Peru doesn't really come up very much in a lot of the books and the research.
Yeah, I don't know if you had a chance to look at that presentation that Aurelio and I got invited to do in the Northwest Chocolate Festival in 2022
I skimmed
regarding
it.
the genetics.
I didn't look at it too much yet.
Yeah, we go a little bit into the genetics, but also into the trade, as Aurelio mentioned here, because it was interesting. There's a lot of things that came from Mexico, and also a lot of things that went from Peru to Mexico during this trade. Peanuts, for example, peanuts are originally from. We didn't know this. They originally came from the Amazon, but peanuts is such a huge culture in Mexico, right? So it's interesting how you see the trade, and
and all the names, cacahuates, they come from the Olmecas, from the Aztecs, from the Mayan languages. Tomate, aguacate, cacahuate, all these kinds of names. These products, they carry these names because the Spaniards, they arrived to Mexico first, and they took the names from their language. But a lot of these products, they came from the Andes first. And a lot of the products that are planted here in the Andes, they were traded from Central America thousands of years ago. Let's say zapote, for example, which is like
It's like
I
an
don't know how to
orange,
describe it.
brown
Yes.
fruit, right?
Yeah. It's so good. Papaya was also brought from Central America. Corn
Mm,
was actually brought from Central America in a very early stage, and it was parallelly being domesticated here and in Central America. Corn. And potatoes and sweet potatoes came from the Andes, and they were brought to Central America. Tomatoes came
Central
from the
America, and then
Andes,
the Spanish also took them. A lot of
and
people
they took
have
them
arguments
to
with
Europe.
this.
the
Yeah,
They
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, they
Philippines
come from
and
Ireland. They don't come from
So
Ireland.
it's very interesting.
The
It's very
potatoes come from the Andes,
right.
and the reason why they grow in Ireland is because that resembles the Andes as close as possible.
Mm,
yeah, but it's interesting to know that now that we have genetic information,
right.
we can
Right.
we can trace a genetic route from the places with the most diversity to the places
Mm,
with the least diversity. So the
mm,
place with the least diversity in the world is the last place this product arrived. So, for example, in Africa, in Ghana and Ivory Coast, you have both these countries. They produce about 60% of the cacao in the world. So they are the biggest cacao producers in the world.
yeah.
Peru produces only 2% of the world's cacao, 2%. But I have balloons. Okay, so
Interesting.
our diversity is bigger than anybody
Right.
else's,
Right.
and that's what's interesting about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're gonna see a lot more research in regards to cacao coming from Peru and focusing on Peru. It sounds like, you never know what's gonna pop up as far as research goes. We know that chocolate definitely was consumed and used thousands of years ago in southern Mexico, Guatemala, the Olmecs, the Mocaya. But then we discover what we discovered in Ecuador. And although we don't have, it doesn't seem like they had the tools to make chocolate. I don't know. It's interesting. You never know, what else
No,
they did with cacao
yeah.
in
So
these
it's
parts of the
interesting.
world.
So what they've discovered in Ecuador is essentially those remnants. But so in Ecuador they have it's on the very. I mean, this has happened before there was any borders. But in
Right.
Ecuador, in what is now Ecuador, right on the border of Peru, there's two burial sites, and they uncovered one of them, which the sun is. And in the side of Peru, you have the same style of burial sites, four of them actually, so there's six in total. And in Peru, they haven't been fully uncovered yet. One has been kind of, believe it or not, there's no funding for it. So they start uncovering it, and I'm not kidding. Like they started unveiling it in the
Hmm.
first on the right process as archaeologists do over like 12 years ago. And then
Mhm.
when the funding runs out, you know what they
Yeah.
do? They bury it all over again
Yeah.
and hope that they get funding again soon.
Yeah.
And then the funding, this has happened now 3 or 4 times. But Aurelio and I visited this with one of our clients in July last year. So we got a private tour of it
Hmm.
where they have found there as well. It's exactly the same thing.
Mm.
It's the same type of burials, and it looks like 5,700 years old, as I was saying earlier, of the remnants of cacao genetics that was used. We don't think it was used as chocolate, and I mean, chocolate was more the chocolate drink that they did back in the day,
Right.
right? So
Right.
this is, I think, the first ones that they
Exactly.
did the Yomex, yeah.
It seems like this was
But
still a
But this is
drink, but it was maybe from the
not
juice, from the
fermented.
fruit.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
juice and
Not the
exactly. We
seed.
think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like that, but we're not
Yeah.
this
And
is
it's interesting.
we're
thousands
not
of
certain.
years before the Central American usages. But yeah, I want to give a
Yeah.
shout out to Quirino Olivera. He's the archaeologist of Monte Grande in Jaén, in Cajamarca. Actually, he had the grace of having us in the ruins of Monte Grande.
Beautiful.
He's the main researcher, the main archaeologist in this area. And actually, I had the privilege of presenting one of his books with him in the Peruvian book fair here in
Very
Lima,
nice.
and it was an amazing experience. This guy, like like really researching about the usage, and the things that he has found are amazing. And I know some news is coming up in the next few months, and
Okay.
Oh, you can't see.
we'll
There
be
it is.
sure
Look.
of sharing it once
It's
it's
blurring up.
open to
Okay,
be
there we
I don't
go.
know
shared.
if you guys can see it. That's the book.
Cacao. Yeah. Ah, okay.
Yeah,
It's
I
So,
amazing.
presented that book in the Peruvian book fair.
and this is his book. What's his name again?
Irino Olivera.
Ah, okay.
He's an archaeologist. So
Beautiful.
there are a few authors for this book, and I had the privilege of presenting
I wonder
in the
what's
book club.
preventing the funding for some of these, because it seems like a lot of the
can-
world is getting interested in cacao history, but I guess
No,
because of
I
money
asked
and
this
Yeah,
very question. I asked this very question when we were there, and um, Peru has about 50,000
more.
archaeological sites that are discovered or more that are not not don't have the funding to unveil.
right,
So we're
right.
talking
This is
not
one of
just a
many.
thousand, not a
Yeah,
hundred. There's like
yeah,
tens of thousands that are
yeah.
could be, this is cacao, but the other ones are for other things. And it's just like, how do you determine the funding goes where?
Hmm.
This is unfortunate because it's yeah, maybe whoever's listening to this that is somebody that's super rich that loves
Yeah,
chocolate. Maybe
cacao.
you want to donate $10 million to go unfund, to unveil this burial site, and
To help
that would
Quirino
be
unveil
amazing.
his, yeah, because he hasn't been able to open the whole thing, but he has already found remnants of cacao inside
That's
these
incredible.
ruins,
Yeah.
and they are being tested right now. But yeah,
Okay.
it's
Let's
it's amazing what we can find if we go even deeper, because maybe you can find older areas in the same ruins that
yeah.
would show that maybe cacao was being domesticated even before
Mm,
what we already know.
yeah.
So yeah, there are a lot of different things to be
It's
learned or
exciting.
still. Yeah, it's very exciting.
So let's bring it back
Yeah,
to 2024. I think we're in.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and from your experience, practical experience working closely with the growers in Peru, the different people that you work with there, what would you say are their greatest challenges in Peru in regards to growing cacao, curing cacao, making a living? What are some practical challenges that people need to understand?
Well, I think
I-
awareness about genetics is the biggest thing. So now there's
wait, are you talking about the
a new,
farmers, or you're talking about you're talking about the
The
growers?
farmers, the growers, yes.
Yeah. Their biggest
okay,
challenge is not just genetics, though. It's their biggest challenge will be um probably
logistics.
sales and logistics. Exactly.
Sales and logistics, like you were saying. Yeah.
Sales and logistics. Farmers, I mean,
But
farmers are
again,
simple.
genetic diversity is a good point too, because we know how specific fermentation can be for different varieties. And if you guys are the epicenter of variety, then you have to, all the farmers in different regions have to be approached in a different way in regards to how to cure
Correct.
it, right?
And
So
all the cacaos are different. So when you find a
Yeah,
chocolate bar
yeah,
in a supermarket, let's say in Europe or in North America, that says Peru, I get worried because there's no one Peruvian cacao.
yeah,
All the
yeah,
cacaos are
yeah,
different. All they have different genetics, different shapes, different flavors, different aromas, different percentages of butter. This is amazing.
yeah,
For
yeah,
example, the
yeah,
chuncho cacao,
yeah,
they have very small seeds and they
yeah,
have a natural higher percentage of cacao butter, like
yeah,
60%.
yeah.
That's crazy. So you can make
56 to
two
58.
ingredient
Yeah, yeah.
chocolate. You
Yeah, it's
can make two
amazing.
ingredient chocolates, cacao
Yeah,
and sugar,
we
80%.
always we always tell people cacao is 50% fat, but there's some that's 40% and there's some that's 60%. That's a huge difference
Yeah, it's
when you
huge.
make
Yeah.
Exactly.
chocolate. When you make chocolate, it makes a
What's
big
interesting
impact.
is like you mentioned, the challenges is so one of the cool things about Peru, even though even though cow production in general is maybe 2 to 3% of the world, as Aurelio was saying, um, the the organic production of cacao, not just cacao, but just organic production, is number one in the world or number two. Like
Mhm.
I think it's always jumping between Peru and Colombia, if I'm not mistaken. Okay,
Mm,
so
I
what does
think
that
it's
mean?
Peru and Dominican Republic.
Oh,
mm,
okay. So it's like once again, cacao production very small, 2 3%,
mm,
but organic cacao most in the world.
mm.
What does that mean? That means that, and usually who is buying organic cacao is more so than not on the artisan chocolates, on the higher end chocolates, right? That want the organic.
Right.
The government of Peru for the last 15, 20 years or so has been investing into a lot of the cacao growing regions right now, and to try to convert the farmers that they are growing usually coca leaves, right? For
Right.
coca is an amazing plant. Coca is very medicinal,
Mm,
but unfortunately, and there's like 25 different varieties, but unfortunately 2 or 3 varieties are used to make the drug, right?
Mhm.
In Peru, maybe in Peru, but in other places. So what the Peruvian government, alongside with the help of with with the, well, I guess help, pressure, influence of international governments, has obtained funding, and they promote cacao growing
Right.
into all these regions where they organic cacao growing, where they
It's
give
worth
the
their while
funds to
to grow it.
crops. Exactly. They teach them how to grow. They give the funds to make infrastructures and so on and so forth.
Mm.
So in that sense, when you mentioned that there's a difference of cacaos with the similar sizes, a lot of them do have knowledge on how to do good fermentation, how to do the right post-harvest processes, in different areas, because they've had a bit of funding from the governments to try to get this going. Now, of
Mm.
course, nothing is always perfect,
Right.
and they can always be optimized, which is where Aurelio comes in often and tries to help different areas. But yeah, in that sense, we want to continue to be able to promote this and find homes for these types of cacaos, these types of great fine flavored cacaos, or else they just get sold into commodity cacao,
Right.
and
Right.
the farmers don't get as much money for commodity cacao. So so that's another problem, I think. That's another challenge, as you would say. So not so the
And
sales that I was
commodity,
telling you is
yeah,
is finding the right client.
Yeah.
and commodity cacao is not sustainable in the long run.
Right.
Like planting cacao is expensive, and it takes a long time to produce.
Yeah. It's
It
not a
takes
cash crop, right? What do they say?
no,
1%,
it
one
takes
to
like two
percent
years
gets
to start
pollinated.
production.
Maybe 50% don't grow
Yeah,
to full pods. Then you have lots of disease and pests and
yeah.
or
It
six
makes no
months to grow.
sense
So it's
to keep it cheap.
yeah.
It makes
It's
no sense
not,
to keep it cheap.
that's true. It doesn't,
Like
the amount of
the
labor
only
involved,
reason,
it doesn't make sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The only reason to keep like this some of the populations that produce cacao poor is so
Yeah.
that they can produce cheap cacao, and
Right.
we need to fight against that.
Yeah.
It's
Like many people have
yeah,
said,
it's
it's getting the consumer to understand that this chocolate that we're talking about is not expensive. This is a sustainable price that makes everyone
mhm,
move forward. The other price is not cheap. It's not what it should be. It's too cheap. It's too cheap.
mhm.
Something
They're
bad is
making
happening
huge
behind the scene.
margins.
Yeah.
They're making some of this. Let's say the commodity cacao. I've been to I don't want to say names, but let's say I've been to the plant of the biggest, one of the most
Mm,
prestigious or premium cacao coming out of Italy, for example.
mm,
And I know what they're paying for cacao. They
mm,
told me I need to have it landed here, landed price for 3.2 euros.
mm,
This is before it went up. So this is I'm talking about last year. So last year when cacao was at the farm level, 2,600, 2,500. And it's only 10% difference between the euro and the US dollar. I'm like, you want that's commodity cacao. You want, organic, the
right.
best quality ever, and you want it shipped and landed in Italy for 3.2 euro, which
Mm,
is 3.5 US. I'm like, you guys are nuts. There's no way that you're actually getting, and they say they're getting the best cacao in the world. I'm
right.
like, you're not. It's impossible because we pay some farmers for the best cacao in the world $5 to $6 at that time in the farm. Plus, bringing it out, there's way more cost to that, right?
Right.
So it's just interesting how, like Aurelio said, it's somebody is making a massive margin. Because
Mm,
I know some, and it's there are artisan chocolate makers that I know very well that has pays very good pricing, and their chocolate even today is still $9 a chocolate bar for a 70-gram bar.
mm,
You know who I'm probably talking about. And I'm like, man, that's cheap. I told them a couple days ago, I'm like, man, you can like your cacao, it's worth more, your chocolate. You could sell it for more, and he's still paying an amazing price to the farmers. So it is possible if he's surviving at that and making a good living from that, then yeah, it's possible to definitely pay more to the farmers.
yeah.
And so
It's no, that's I think I know exactly who you're talking about, but
yeah.
it's funny because it's a different mindset for people. Different people part of the world they have a different idea as far as business goes. Some people are happy having a good life, a roof over their head, food on their table. They don't need anything more. What they are passionate about is, making a difference in the world, whether it's making good chocolate and or helping out people at the other end there that are growing the cacao. For some people, that's
Yeah.
good enough. For him, that's good enough, and that's wonderful. So, and I think that's
Exactly.
what's good about the craft world is it does tend to attract people like that with that sort of mindset.
I love that.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah,
of
me
chocolate
too.
makers,
We
they're
need more of those
really
guys.
interested. They're really interested in learning where cacao is coming from and how much money is getting to exactly to the farmers. And they ask everything.
Yeah.
And they want to see the farmers eating their chocolate bar. So this is one of the best experience that you can have, like bringing the chocolate bar back to the farmers and having them taste it is one of the best experience that you can have.
Yeah.
It's amazing, like sharing that with the farmers and putting the bar next to the cacao pot and tasting the pulp with the chocolate and
I think
having
it's
this experience with the
interesting.
farmers is so
It's
cool.
if we
Olivier
if
from Gaston Chocolat was saying that he did that. He gave his farmers the chocolate. And the funny thing too is at first, a lot of times they don't like it, right? It's like, this is too bitter. But he was saying that they actually learn to like it. They learn to appreciate it, right? So
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
amazing too.
there's a learning curve, yes,
Yeah.
100%. And in many of these places, a lot of farmers, they have never tasted cacao, so they have no references,
Yeah.
you know.
They never tasted chocolate. Yeah, they've never tasted the
Sorry,
chocolate.
chocolate. Yes, sorry, they've
Yeah.
never tasted chocolate. Yes,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
have no
it's
references,
interesting.
but at the end, they are learning right now. And there's, as Marcos said, there's a lot of help right now from the USAID and a lot of different international corporations that are putting money into co-ops and different regions for them to learn about cacao and chocolate. No, for us that we are
Yeah.
teaching chocolate courses to farmers, it's a great experience for us to teach them because they come with their own references to what a flavor is. So for us, sometimes if you taste the cacao and you say, okay, this is plump, but for them, they have never tasted plum,
Right.
So you have
Yeah.
to learn about their fruits and
Right.
what are their references and their comparisons when you're trying to teach tasting.
Yeah.
And I usually teach them how to recognize and defect in chocolate and where it comes from in the harvest or the post-harvest process. And that's a great experience for them to know what's the flavor of a defect and where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering too, you were talking about the government of Peru sort of helping to push forward the idea of organic cacao and whatnot. But do you feel like they're doing a good job also in regards to realizing what they have as far as all that genetic material of cacao and preserving it and finding ways to protect it? Is there some of that happening in Peru or?
Yeah. So
Well,
so let me there's a couple of things because this is a very good point that you just touched up, and it's almost like a double-edged sword. What's happening right now with organic, certified organic, is becoming very difficult, right? There is increasing let's just call it, I don't know, regulations within the European Union, which then trickled down to the States and Canada as well. And actually this last year, second half, there's been like 20% of the certified organic co-ops, farmers have dropped the organic certification just because they're like it's just too difficult to maintain. It's just so it's almost like the fair trade. It's like it's now becoming too costly. And for a little while during 2023, there was the first Q2, I would say, there was organic cacao prices for Europe were different than the organic cacao prices for the US. Why? Because all the additional testing that the farmers and the co-ops had to do to prove that it was organic, that meets the requirements within European standards, was way more costly. So they ended up having two prices. Oh, you want certified organic? And they would ask you, where's it going? It's going to Europe. Oh, okay, it's this price. Oh no, it's going to the US. Oh, it's a little bit less. It's going this price. So that's one thing. So I don't know if I think the Peruvian government maybe isn't focusing so much right now on organic. And I don't think they're focusing too much on what they should be, which is the preservation of genetics, preservation of the promotion of these different cacao growing regions for the preservation of those genetics. What my partner and I do here, and he said this earlier, we are the only company within Peru that provides the most diverse amount of Peruvian cacao. And we're probably the only company in the world, when you compare other people that are exporting cacaos from their particular country, I'm willing to bet that there's nobody doing 20 origins from that particular country.
Right.
We're doing that. But why do we do that? The reason why we do this is because we're mainly working with small and medium-sized co-ops, and if not small, medium, we work with everybody, but small, medium-sized co-ops are the majority, or farmer associations, which are even smaller, or even directly with the farmers.
Mhm.
Why? Because they don't have a chance to get their cacao out that is fine flavored. They don't have a chance.
Right.
The cacao that gets out, usually the ones that you see around the world from Peru, are going to be from very big co-ops. And
Yeah.
just to put this into context, 75% of all the farmers in Peru are not in co-ops. And the 25% of the farmers that are in co-ops, only a small fraction of those co-ops have the knowledge, capabilities to be able to export their cacao.
Yeah.
So we've tried to focus on really helping out the medium and small size co-ops to be able to learn this, get customers for them, establish them, and then let them grow. And then once they grow, they can export themselves. We did
Yeah.
this for a company.
Yeah.
My partner did this in, like, I think 2017 or 2018 for a small, well, let's say small, medium-sized co-op, never exported in their life before. We found them a client in Italy that was fairly big. It became consistent, taught them this co-op how to export themselves, and eventually now, it's still a sustainable line for them, and they're still, now they
That's
have a
amazing.
sustainable client that's continuously
Yeah.
paying them.
Yeah.
They've sustained their community and the farmers that they have, and great. Now let's, we move on. Now we go help out other farmers and
Right.
other co-ops like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think brings up the idea too of this idea of single estate chocolate bars, where again there's less of that distance between the maker and the growers. You don't just have a regional cacao anymore, regional chocolate. It's this is the guy or people who grew this cacao, and this is the chocolate bar made from it. And there's a lot of excitement there. Logistically, if it makes sense, if that's possible, in a perfect world, I think that's ideal. Is this farmer grows something, there's a buyer who loves it and they want to use it. That's the perfect arrangement, I think. And if there's
Yeah,
someone,
exactly. And if we like, and to say that to say that if we're able to find, let's say, more clients, more artisan chocolate makers that want to try some amazing genetics that not a lot of people have access to,
yeah,
great. Give me a call, give my partner a call, message me on our Instagram or our website. And not only that, like, I mean, we're completely transparent, right? We will introduce you to the farmers if you want to come down to
right,
Peru with us.
yeah,
And let's do that.
yeah. And it's wonderful for the farmers too. It's if this is their cacao that they grew, it has a very specific, flavor profile, whatever it is. And I think it's nicer for them too if they appreciate that their cacao is going to a specific bar. It's not just
Oh,
being blended with other
they do.
farmers,
Oh,
Yeah.
They do.
absolutely.
They're so proud.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
do value it a lot.
And
When
so that's
people
why
visit
it's
them,
important what
yes.
you're doing, because it's not just about the big co-ops, which have their place too, but what you're doing
Mhm.
also makes huge impact in the whole craft chocolate culture, really, at all different levels.
Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes it is very difficult to standardize or to differentiate an origin.
Yeah.
So when you have large quantities and you are gathering cacao from many different areas, you're mixing a lot of genetics.
Yeah.
But when we work with these small guys, it's a lot easier to separate a certain genetic or that's a certain group of genetics from one area or the other, and then export these varieties or this group of varieties sustainably. That's a lot more interesting for us, and most of the companies, they don't want to do the work of doing all of this, you know. It's hard work, but at the end it
It
pays.
is.
It pays a lot more to the farmers. It's more sustainable. It has a lot more impact on the long run, and it's fun.
It's hard work, but
Yeah.
it's definitely, I think it's possible, you know, we just need more
Mhm.
brains working on it together,
More awareness.
more
Yes.
awareness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think it's more awareness on the consumer side of things,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
so much on the like origin side of things. I think we need more awareness on the consumer side. So
Consumers, I've been doing, you know, when I started off in fine chocolate in Toronto, I was a chocolate sommelier assistant, and that's sort of what got me going. And this was, I think, over 15 years ago now. And 15 years later, honestly, it doesn't seem like much has changed as far in Canada, as far as people's awareness of fine chocolate and cacao. And people still don't know what the percentage is on a bar mean, and they have no idea where chocolate comes from. So there's a huge road ahead as far as educating the
Huge gap.
public. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's very important. It's very important.
Yeah,
And
even chocolate makers. So there's a story, a funny story that Marco and I had to go through. So we gather samples of the best cacaos in Peru. So the cacaos that
you're
are,
reminding
you
me.
know what I'm gonna say? Yes, I'm
Yeah,
gonna tell you. Okay.
yeah,
So we gather these great samples of the best cacaos in Peru, like different origins in one
yeah,
box to send to one chocolate
mm,
maker
yeah.
mm,
We
in
sent
Europe.
seven origins, seven different origins.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say who's the client,
Yeah,
but we sent these beautiful samples of expensive, very nice
mm,
quality, very well fermented cacao
mm,
to this company in Europe. And after a few weeks that we didn't get any news about this cacao, we called them and we asked them, "Hey, how was everything with our samples? Did you like the cacao? What do you think? Did you make trials? What were the results?" And they were like, "What cacao is this? Oh, that cacao. Oh yeah, we threw them away." We're like, "Why did you throw them away?" "Oh, because they had so many defects that we throw them away."
mm.
Defects. These are some of the best cacaos in the world. Like chocolate makers are winning prizes with these cacaos
What did he
in
mean by
many different
defects?
countries.
yeah, exactly.
Well, exactly.
Mm,
So genetically diverse cacaos, they have different shapes, different sizes,
yeah, yeah.
and companies that are used to working only with African
Mm,
cacao. So African
right.
cacao, it's all amelonado, so big round beans.
Juicy,
So
plump.
when you
Yeah.
compare that to, for example, chuncho, chuncho is half or less than half the size of a regular cacao bean.
Yeah.
They're
So
more
it's a lot smaller.
flattish a little bit.
Or for example, the Pura ones, they look like not how do you say payares? But
Yeah,
they are like a little bit flatter. The Pura beans, which are very expensive, but they are great cacao
un
for
payar
some
is
of the
lima bean, I think, like a lima bean,
Lima
I think.
bean.
yeah, it could be like it's
Uh,
are lima beans
Flatter,
flat?
not round. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Pura cacaos are a lot flatter. So
Mm,
if you so diversity expresses
mm,
in many different ways, different
mm,
aromas, different flavors, different
right.
capabilities of resistance to illnesses, but also different shapes of the beans.
Yeah.
But at the end, that's how diversity is expressed. But there are chocolate makers that don't
That's a good
understand
point.
diversity yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
so
big.
they
This is a
threw.
big company.
Yeah,
They
this is
are like huge.
their first step was, oh, it didn't meet the size, so
Right.
they threw them all out,
Wow.
all of them, seven different origins. And I'm like, it was interesting.
And it
So
costs a
they
lot
just
to
don't know how to
send the
work with them.
sample.
Yeah.
It's it They had no idea how to actually work
Hmm,
with them
hmm,
because, like Aurelio said, they're used to getting one specific genetic, one specific origin that has a certain size, shape, roundness, whatever, and it didn't
hmm,
meet that. Oh, this must be a defect.
hmm.
When in reality, it's not even close. Like look at a heirloom tomato, for example, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
A heirloom
Yeah.
tomato looks ugly as super ugly, and it
It's
grows in
green.
the
It's not even
no,
red.
just a green, different colors, different
Yeah.
shapes,
Yeah.
completely very not symmetrical. You know, delicious tomato. Usually the most expensive tomato out
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
when you're buying all these other ones, and it's like, okay. But that's just an example, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
these beans, some of them different shapes, flat, whatever, amazing, amazing quality inside.
Yeah, the
But if you don't know how to work with them,
craft chocolate world really brings up the idea more of not just beyond chocolate, but this idea of flavor and ingredients, quality ingredients that we're kind of losing in the world today. A lot of cultures now just don't understand what flavor is, what quality ingredients are. So
And I'll
that's
tell you one thing, it's conservation is so related to to information. If you learn
right.
how diversity is expressed in flavors, then you're gonna want to preserve this diversity.
Yeah.
So we need conservation because we have been for a long time in many different crops destroying diversity.
Mm.
So everything is monocultures now. Everything. And when you have monocultures, you have a risk, a big risk of annihilating the species. So it
Mm.
has happened many times. For example, in bananas, you have Gros Michel, for example, which used to be until the 50s, the most grown banana variety in the world. So most of the exported bananas to Europe and the US that came from South America and from central places in Asia, it was Gros Michel, only one species. And to spread bananas, you take like the baby banana from the root of the other banana, and then you kind of clone it.
Mm.
So
Mm.
you are eliminating diversity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you had this illness called El Mal de Panama, the Panama, how do you say? I don't remember what's the name in English, but you have this illness. Most of the banana populations in the world were extinguished.
Mm.
They were
Extinguished.
eliminated.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they were
the same
eliminated.
mistake.
So now we have a new banana
Right.
variety. We have
Say that.
the no, it's Cavendish. So now it's the
Right.
Cavendish.
Cavendish as
Yeah.
well.
But
Yeah.
we're still doing the same thing,
Yeah, they're
monocultures,
making
monocultures,
they're
monocultures,
Yeah.
and we are not
yes.
learning anything.
No, exactly. They're doing the
Yeah,
same mistake because if there's one plague,
Because
plagues are
it's always the
usually
most cost
specific.
effective. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
exactly, and exactly,
That's what
monocultures
it
is the
always
most
comes
cost
to.
effective.
Yeah.
Exactly, but it's the same
Mhm.
mistake because, like I said, if you have one plague, the plague usually attacks a very specific
Right.
variety or
And I
genetics.
think maybe for some people at the top who are making all the money, whether, a certain, let's say in Peru, that industry is decimated to them, it doesn't matter, right? Like it doesn't really, if it decimated in Peru, we'll do it somewhere else instead, But, as a whole, it's just not smart thinking, long term to continue to grow
Yeah,
things in this way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
that's a really, really good point. Because one of my students actually asked me today, because I have different kinds of classes. We're making truffles, and they're trying to ask me, what is it about all this fine chocolate? Like I like Calabo, I like Purdy, like what like this regular chocolate. I like it. It's fine. Why do I need to? I was like, it's not really about that. And you guys bring up a good point because it's what happens in the background to create that chocolate is also a big part of it. It's not just, maybe it satisfies your palate in the moment, but what is it doing to your world and our world, behind the scenes? That's what some people need to remember when they're
Well,
eating
not
it.
just from the
Yeah.
side of monocultures, but also some of these guys are if we want to move to the darker side of things, is the slave trade, the child labor, all of
Right,
that.
right,
And so there's a few movies on this. Rotten on Netflix has an episode called Bitter Chocolate,
right.
which is fairly accurate. I would say I agree with about 95% of that.
Mm,
Watching it, go watch it. It's 45 minutes. There's a lot of good teachings in there.
mm,
Yeah, but
But also,
it's
if you
also
want to see, just one sec. If you want to see
yeah.
another documentary that's actually even better and more real, it's called The Dark Side of Chocolate, and it's a documentary that's about 45 minutes long. And you can find it on YouTube. The
mm,
Dark Side of Chocolate,
mm,
and it was made in like 2000, I think 7 or 2011, somewhere around there, and it really tackles what's going on in West Africa a little bit, which is still going on today. And these
right.
big guys, like you mentioned, they know exactly what's going on, and these are the guys that are promoting. These are the guys that are really controlling chocolate, and they want to keep it like that so that they can keep their large margins
Yeah.
and keep exploitation. But it sucks.
Yeah, but it's also about conservation. When you have a monoculture so extensively grown,
Yeah.
there's always going to be a new illness that is going to be what's happening right now in Africa. It's always going to be
Especially
a
when
new
you have a
illness that
lot of
you're not going to be able to control.
especially when you have a lot of intercropping and different species mixed in, it's harder sometimes for these diseases to jump. You know, if everything is the
Yes,
same,
exactly.
jump, 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 jump. But if there's different species, it blocks, you know, it
Yes.
protects, you know, from
And
spreading
also
forward.
in this genetic diversity, you have hidden resistance to illnesses that you don't even know that you have.
Mm,
And you have to preserve this genetic diversity for cacao production to be sustainable in the history of the world for the future.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, for example, what happened here in Peru with coffee. Peru is one of the biggest coffee producers in the world. And in 2010, we had the coffee rust that almost destroyed most of the coffee population in Peru. It was horrible. The Agrobanco, the bank for farmers in Peru, was bankrupt
mm,
because of this, you know? And right now, the only places where you can plant coffee in a sustainable way in Peru is in the highlands, in more than 1,300 meters over the sea level. That's the only way you can plant coffee in Peru now, because if you put it in a lower area, you're gonna have coffee rust. Coffee rust is a fungus, so you need moisture, humidity. So when you go higher than 1,300 meters over the sea level, the relative humidity of the air is so low that this fungus can't
Mm.
develop. That's
Mm.
why most of the Peruvian cacao coffee comes from the highlands and not anymore from the lowlands. So all the time, illnesses are searching for ways to spread or to jump from one species to the other.
Right.
And when you have a monoculture, it's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to lose resistance to illnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, in a way, cacao is frustrating to work with because genetically it's such a mismatch all over the world and it's so complex and there's so many varieties. But in a way that could be good if it's used properly, right? If you enhance different farms with multiple genetics of cacaos, in some ways that can benefit itself.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yes, I
No,
agree.
totally.
So you also create products from the cacao you distribute. And you have a satellite location in Vancouver. So what can you tell us about the products that Cacao Life creates that's available for
Yeah,
makers
sure.
and the public?
Of course. So yeah, we focused right now on, as we mentioned earlier, on really the diversity of Peruvian cacao. And then many years ago, as we were helping farmers do this, we also had um, a manufacturing plant in the south of Lima, which is in Mala, where we process the cacao. We either are getting it from the farmers, and if we export the cacao as is, we still have to. It's important to note this. Doesn't matter who you get it from, which co-op, which farmer, we're still having to process it, sift it, select it in Lima or in Mala, because it never comes as let's say, I call it the quality that the chocolate maker needs it.
Right.
So we still are losing anywhere between 5 to 10% of, even from the best co-op that we get it. We still select it. We still have to, we might need additional drying and so on. But now we export it as is after we select it, let's say, and get it to the export quality. If we do need to create some products that we have some other clients, we do every derivative of cacao you could think of. And also now have pivoted and or in addition created a brand called a brand for consumers called Cacao Life, where we are promoting not, our basically our cacao products, but not in bulk, not in wholesale. Also in, cacao butter, cacao powder, but even health snacks that mix our other business. We have a business also with superfoods, Peruvian superfoods. So, for example, we'll have like 70% dark chocolate cacao nibs that are also with maca powder, or 70% dark chocolate cacao that is with lucuma powder, or 70% dark chocolate cacao nibs with camu camu powder, and so on. It's like we're trying to focus on providing a very healthy snack that is still delicious and that is still I wouldn't it's not a bean to bar. It's not something that we're focusing on. We're not experts on that, but we are experts on superfoods and health and quality.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely, that's a huge niche, chocolate, craft chocolate, peanut butter chocolate doesn't have to be about beautiful, perfect bars. There's so many other uses for cacao, and that needs to be pushed as well. So I think what you guys are doing good is good there as well. Because I get a lot of customers now too who are starting to ask, I just want beans. I just want cocoa butter. I want good cocoa powder, things like that. So there's definitely a growing niche for that.
Absolutely.
Well, and so
Yeah, and besides
it's also that we don't want to compete with our clients.
That's a
We
good
want to
point.
work
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
So we start making bars, and we are also supplying the supplies to different chocolate makers.
yeah,
I don't think it's gonna be good to compete with our clients.
no.
Right.
And
Um,
I'd like to add
yeah.
also one little thing. Also, one of the things that we like to do is we're now promoting as well. There's a lot of like you mentioned, Joseph, your clients, your students, they could be up and comer chocolate makers that have maybe a desktop Melanger from Premier that's
Yeah.
2 pounds or 2 kilos to 4 kilos, and they may be looking for beans um, that are very special, but they can't afford to, buy a sack from
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
So we're also like, so what we provide to, Meridian, to some of these distributors, we also have them in 5 kilo boxes here in Canada. So we
Mm.
have so if you go to our website, out of the 20, we actually have 15 origins or varieties available already in stock in 5 kilo boxes. That's we don't really have a lot of we don't warehouse cacao cacao here in Canada. So usually if you're buying in bulk, we're shipping it from Peru.
Right. Right.
However, we've decided to make the move and the investment into providing 5 kilo boxes as well, besides our cacao like branded products, but 5 kilo boxes as well for that chocolate maker at home that wants to have amazing beans, but in low
Yeah.
volumes, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, we also have 5 different of these origins in 1 kilo nibs.
Mm.
So we have like chunchos or we have pure white in
That's
nib form.
amazing.
So even chocolate makers that don't that can't start from the bean because they don't have a winnower, for example,
Yeah.
but you want to do some really, really amazing chocolate.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We're also providing 1 kilo bags of lightly roasted, perfectly roasted nibs.
And do you ship only in Canada or do you ship to the States as well?
No, we ship to the States as well.
Wonderful. Can you tell
Yeah.
us, people always ask me because they love the nibs, like, oh, they taste so good and they're so good for you and all this. And now you have, like you said, you have different origin varieties of these nibs. What can people do at home? Not chocolate makers, but what can people do at home with nibs? How can they use them? How
Oh,
can they enjoy
absolutely. Okay.
them?
So I have so besides making chocolate, if you're a chocolate maker and if you want to get high quality nibs, what you can additionally do with them is I add them into my smoothie, my
Mm,
protein shake every day
mm,
when I come back after the gym. I'll add them into that. You can add them into your trail mixes. You can add them into your granola. You
mm.
can add them into as a substitute. It's my brother makes. He called me the other day. He lives in Toronto, and he's like, "Dude, I'm using now your nibs as a healthy chocolate chip substitute for baking."
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's
into
amazing.
banana breads, into all of this, he'll just they're done buying semi-sweet chocolate chips. They're like, I can just use nibs. It's
Yeah,
basically 100% chocolate, and it's super healthy and it's delicious. And when you bake them, they still get mushy, they're not crunchy, not melting, but right in between. So
yeah,
there are lots of uses for
wonderful.
nibs.
Yeah, there is. I
Yeah.
tell people to use it where you would use nuts. So like your banana bread, instead of using walnuts, you can use little bits of cocoa nib, right? And
Uh-huh.
as the flavor, it has a little bit of the crunch. So there are a lot of uses people don't know yet. So that's wonderful that you offer that. And even for the
Yeah.
makers, because I do some tutoring online and people say, I just bought nibs because I just can't be bothered for the winnowing. I just, people who don't know it's a big problem to winnow your cacao. So, but a lot of the nibs that are available are not that great, right?
No, that's
So
the problem. Exactly. So yeah, exactly. So the nibs that are available, let's say whatever, Whole Foods and all these,
they're
it's
not good.
commodity cacao.
Yeah,
It's not fine flavored.
yeah,
So that's why we came up with
It's sold
these
like
five
as a
origins.
superfood mostly.
right. And
Exactly.
because it's sold as a superfood, people expect it to be bitter and bad and like, but this is good for me, so I need to eat it. But you guys probably sell nibs that are not bitter, that taste
Oh
delicious,
no, I
right?
have I have my one of my friend's client. I guess he's a friend and he's also a client out in Mexico. He just posted and he sent me a picture of him because he's tried the variety. He's like he just sent me a picture of him making chuncho or Cusco 90%. He's like these beans, these nibs are incredible. It's like I'm using 90% and I don't even need to add much more. Like
Yeah,
they're already so sweet. There's like he's over the moon with how well it turned out. This is
that's
just a couple
amazing.
of days ago. He sent me a little video. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
and you
so
put
so
some
we are
amazing
chocolate
nibs. Yeah.
makers, and we have a chocolate school here, and we teach people how to roast. We teach roasting techniques. We teach winnowing techniques. We teach all the time. So we know what we're doing. I'm
So
actually an
Aurelio,
agro-industrial engineer.
who are you teaching in Peru? Are these up and coming bean to bar makers? Who wants to learn in Peru?
Yeah, we have been teaching to a lot of different people, pastry chefs, just people, entrepreneurs, people that want to start a business.
Mm.
But also we are working now with the Vida, which is a branch of the government who are in charge of promoting alternative products to coke leaf. And they are hiring us to teach these big courses in the middle of the jungle and
Wow.
make evaluations. So now we are creating data. So we didn't have any information regarding what was the knowledge of chocolate making in the cacao producers. And now we are creating that data. We are teaching them how to make chocolate, how to temper, how to do all the different techniques. But then we are testing them and we are creating data and we are doing tasting of their chocolate, because we have a lot in Peru. We have a lot of low quality chocolate and a lot of high quality chocolate as well. But people don't really know how to differentiate. So we're trying to have a long term, let's say, accompanying all of these different co-ops and small producers and farmers that are trying to make chocolate and they are maybe failing or they have some obstacles because of quality control, or maybe there are a lot of different organizations in Peru that are still roasting with fire, with wood fire or something like that, so cacao is hygroscopic. It will suck in all these
smoky,
this
great
burn smell, and it will get ruined. So we're teaching a lot of people, and we have different contracts and cooperations with universities here in Peru. So we teach usually in Universidad Católica. They have a beautiful facility for their chef
For a
school.
classroom.
We have a very very nice deal with them.
Beautiful.
A lot of their teachers, they come into our course to learn about chocolate, because most of the chefs, they learned with covertures. So even the teachers, they come into our courses so that they can learn a little bit about tasting, a little bit about chocolate making. In the last course that we did in Tingo Maria in the jungle, we had 50 people, and we made 7 different types of chocolate, even purple chocolate with purple corn. We made 7 different types of chocolate.
Very nice.
And we roasted with these small bread ovens, like the really small bread ovens, because we wanted people to learn that you can do a good roasting with not spending a lot of money. The thing is that people think that money is an obstacle. You ask a farmer, how much do you have to spend to have a chocolate plant? And they say, oh, $1 million, like an absolute sum that they could never have, And we try to do it like really cheap. We try to do it like you could buy these machines and you could do it yourself, and
I think that's a good point
get it closer to them.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing what you're doing with the farmers and people in Peru, but it's also something that I hope to happen in places like the US or in Canada or wherever, is that you're just the people in town. People want to make their own cheese, they want to make their own bread, they want to make their own wine, they want to make their own this. People can start making their own chocolate at home. It is doable.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is doable. And some people say, some makers be like, oh, if everyone starts making chocolate, then the market gets smaller, but not really. Like, let's say somebody at home, they use chocolate all the time for their cookies and this, and they just want to make their own fresh chocolate. If they appreciate the work involved, they'll be more likely, I think, to buy your bars, because they know now.
100%. 100%.
And it's fun.
The market will get larger, much larger, for the artisan and bean to bar chocolate world, which is what we're in.
Yeah.
It'll get smaller for the commodity industrial
And
chocolate,
that's the goal. Yeah,
which is
that's the goal.
amazing because
Yeah.
when they start doing it at home, they're gonna start really developing the flavor profiles that
Yeah.
they appreciate,
Yeah.
and they're gonna go out and look for it.
Yeah.
And they're only
Exactly.
going to be able to get it from the other chocolate makers, the bean to bar artists and chocolate makers, right?
Yeah.
So it's a great point. And I wanted to add to what Aurelio was saying, because it's something we're very proud of. So for the last 6 years or so, about 6 years now, we've been an exclusive we have the exclusive rights of bringing in the DCM or Babani's premier machines. And we've literally as a company been the trailblazers for artisan chocolate making in Peru. So as Aurelio was also a judge, as you know, he's the judge for Salón de Chocolate y Cacao in
Mm,
Peru, which is akin with they're now part of the Salón de Chocolate.
mm, mm.
And he's a judge there, but it's that's been around I think for 11 years, but 6, 7 years ago, there's only a handful of chocolate makers out there that are actually from Peru. Now I think this last July, I think there was about 200 chocolate makers coming out
Wow.
from Peru,
Wow.
many of which
370 samples. 370 samples we had in the last
370
chocolate show.
samples, and exactly, and all of these guys are coming from machines that we've provided. And what's even more so dear to me is not just art. I'm not just talking about artists and chocolate makers, but I'm specifically trying to focus on the fact that we're really promoting this with the farmers and the co-ops and the associations, because the grower and the producer can also now become a chocolate maker that provides that provides more value and more money in their
Yeah.
pocket.
Yeah.
And and then this trip that we're going to, we're actually going to go visit, for example, Pumati and Paititi. Paititi told me in July they now have I think 19. They fought now, and they have 19 roasters, 19 melangers from us. 19, man. We're talking that most of them are tabletops. A couple
Yep.
of them are much bigger. But how amazing is it that a producer has now grown
Wow.
to create their own chocolate, to have quite a large line, to then be sustainable. And by the way, their chocolate is amazing, amazing. It is incredible.
That's
So
really nice to hear.
so I think in the years to come, there's going to be amazing chocolate coming out of
Yeah.
Peru.
And
Joseph,
I think that's
there's a thing that you said that I liked about wine, comparing wine to chocolate. And I think that in the future, some chocolate makers are going to be cacao producers. Some of the best
I think
chocolate
so.
makers in
Yeah.
the world are going to be cacao producers.
You talk to some of
And that's
them.
because they have control.
Yeah. You talk to some of the makers, and a lot of them are itching to just go to origin and start doing it all there, kind of like wine. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely see that happening. But it's amazing too for the people in Peru, the farmers in Peru, because again, we have a very narrow perspective of bean to bar chocolate. When I got into it, it was like European, French, Italian brands and things like that. And that doesn't work for everyone all over the world, right? And so in Peru, they're not going to be buying expensive European, American chocolate bars, but they can still enjoy the same incredible quality, and they can do it themselves and sell amongst, each other locally. And that just enhances the whole culture, the bean to bar culture, I think.
Oh yeah.
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 It can be
That's
done
true.
in
We
different
also
ways. It can
we
be
also
done in-
donate refiners every year, So every year for the winner of the best cacao in Peru, we donate a refiner in the
okay.
Salon of Cacao and Chocolate here in Peru. So
Amazing.
we have been doing this like for years now. I think it was the first time in 2018, the first time we imported these refiners. So and these refiners, they have a huge impact because they're cheap and they can produce large quantities of
Yeah.
chocolate.
Yeah.
One of these small refiners can produce maybe
Oh, yeah.
60 bars per batch a day or maybe day and a half. So if you like, it's very difficult for a chocolate maker to sell more than that when they start.
That's true.
That's
That's
a
a
lot
good
of
point.
bars.
Yeah.
That's a lot of bars when they start.
Yeah.
So yeah, but they have a big impact here.
With everything we've discussed here, you guys obviously are very passionate. You're doing a lot of great things, and we want that to keep growing. But what do you feel, and you can have different answers for either of you, what frustrates you the most right now today as far as what you're trying to do? Is there anything that you
first. Yeah, I think what frustrates me the most is that I feel like that price is still a big factor.
Mm,
And I think I mentioned to you this earlier that there's a chocolate maker that is still paying amazing pricing and selling his chocolate bar that is 70 grams at $9.
I know.
And that's what I mean
It's
to this. I
yeah.
mean, like then you have other chocolate makers that can, I see their pricing. I know that they can probably pay more, yet they still um are fighting to bring down the cost
Mm,
when in reality I feel like guys, like why don't you negotiate with your packaging manufacturer,
mm,
not the farmer, not
mm,
us that we're trying to.
right.
So I mean that's one of my
Yeah,
most frustrating parts of things. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of different chocolate makers are spending more in packaging than in
Yeah.
cacao,
Yeah. I can
So
understand where
yeah,
they're coming
that's
from, but it's definitely a good idea to rethink it too, sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that could be frustrating for us. Yeah, here it's to keep the clients to be stable with us. That's challenging because we want to ensure the farmers that we want to guarantee them a market for all their cacao. And sometimes when clients are not stable and they don't keep on buying the same
Yeah.
beans,
Yeah.
it's very difficult for us to maintain the whole supply chain running as we want to.
That's a good
So yeah,
point. Yeah.
we need more volumes, like bigger volumes,
Yeah, that's not necessarily
to make
just
it
on the
sustainable.
client. I think that's also because the
Hmm.
client, it's the volume that they buy, right? So unfortunately, in the artisan chocolate world,
Yeah.
there aren't that many clients that are buying 5, 10 metric tons, 20 metric tons a
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
of one type of cacao,
Yeah.
let alone probably of all the varieties of cacao, right? So most of the chocolate makers, it seems like you know, a sack, 2 sacks, 3 sacks, 5 sacks.
Yeah.
What I would love, which is probably something more that Aurelio would love even more, is maybe the frustration isn't really on the consumer end. I think my frustration right now is probably not having enough time in the day to really find more clients.
Mm,
If I think that if I could get a couple hundred, let's say, base clients,
yeah.
then that will bring the sustainability that Aurelio is that my partner here is talking about.
Yeah.
It's not just,
That makes
the volume
sense.
increases, but not the volume increases, but not just from one particular chocolate maker.
Yeah.
It's increased because I have many chocolate makers that are wanting that particular origin or variety.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Exactly. It's difficult because as a new maker, if I, for me or whoever, small scale, especially when in the first 5 years, whatever, you want to try all different kinds of cacao. It's not
Hmm.
sustainable, but from an artist perspective, it's like I need to find the
Hmm.
one that's right for me. And so you kind of switch back and forth, which doesn't really help people in your case or the farmers, but you can see why they want to play around with it. But it is true that it's also not good for makers to constantly just be switching origins just for something different. That doesn't really work
Hmm.
in the long run as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's a good point someone else brought up too, is you need, because everyone's buying so little, you need many more to sell to. I think we may have covered this question, but let's just ask it one more time. Chocolate making seems to be less understood than wine, coffee, cheese, other foods. Why do you think the general public today still lacks understanding in cacao and chocolate? Why do we still lack that
I can
education?
take that one. Well, there are many stages to cacao production to chocolate production. It's a long process. Um, for example, since harvest, most of the people don't know that a lot of the quality of the final chocolate, um, you can get it in the harvesting process, because if you harvest the pot when it's not ripened yet, then you're gonna have a lot of flat and what we call pizarrosos. So beans that don't have grooves and that are very astringent.
Mm,
And if you get over ripened, you're gonna have the embryos of the cacao that are grown, and it ruins the flavor of the chocolate.
mm,
So since harvest, there's a big impact in quality. And the same thing happens in fermentation. So if you don't select those effective beans and the beans that are ill beans or sick beans, if you don't separate them before fermentation, you're gonna have a huge effect in the fermentation process. So there are a lot of things that should be done to get high quality cacao in the harvest and post harvest process. But a lot of people don't know. They don't know how it happens and where it happens and why it happens. And that's only in the cacao process. Then when we talk about chocolate, you have to select the beans, and this is a very complex process because you need to take all the stones out. If you are doing a high quality cacao and you get it from us, you're gonna get very clean beans, and you just have to open the sack and pour it in the roasting machine or the oven or whatever. But if you are an industrial chocolate maker, you're going to be buying lots of cacao, and these cacaos are going to go through a large quantity of machines to be able to clean it before using the beans. So the beans go through so many stages before the cacao turns into chocolate that is very difficult for people to learn and understand this process. It's so long and complex, and much more complex than maybe cheese or wine. Because it's very so fermentation in wine is complex, but it's shorter. It's only fermentation and maybe clarification, filtering, or something like that, but it's simple. In cacao you also have fermentation, in 2 different types of fermentation if you're doing it well. But also you have to do controlled drying. If you don't want to have acid beans, you need to control the selection. There's so many things that you have to control.
That's a good point too about the cheese, because
so much more complex.
Somebody can go to a cheese factory, they bring in the milk, maybe it's local milk, and they pour it into the machines, and they can see everything that happens right there in that one factory. But cacao, you can't do that. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's such a long process. Well, and also there are a lot of big cacao traders and chocolate producers that they don't want you to know about how things are made. And they openly hide it.
That's a good point too. Like the fact that
nobody learns.
You have these big companies that have been pumping out chocolate for years. There's so much advertising, every day about chocolate, and a lot of people still don't even know what the percentage means on a bar. After all these years and all that information, they still don't know.
And their logos are a cow or I don't know, milk, a bucket of milk, or maybe hazelnuts, or maybe whatever, any other thing that doesn't relate to cacao. You have to take the bar and like read the small letters to see if there's cacao in the chocolate.
And as Aurelio says, it's probably done on purpose. Like, why is it that the illustrations on most chocolate bars, like coming from big, the big guys, why is it not the cacao pod or the cacao beans or the cacao tree? Why is it everything but that? Makes you wonder.
That's interesting. There are some brands that are starting to do that. Nestle starting to make bars with cocoa pods on there and stuff, and the single origins. So things can get kind of sticky too in the future too, and they want to hop on to a lot of the work that's being doing in the craft world.
Actually, so I have a feeling and a theory that that's happening already. And the reason why is because I do think, and I have seen over the last 7 years or so in this, here in Vancouver and maybe in other parts of the States, that it is growing. I think that the knowledge, I think that the consumers are wanting better quality. Maybe they still don't know the percentage of, some of them don't know the percentage, like what it means on the bar. But I feel like they are growing in the sense that they want better quality. And what I've noticed is that, there's this hype about single origins or artisan like this. So I feel like the big guys are creating a line of their premium normal chocolates that they usually provide, are creating a line that is single origin now.
Right.
I saw in Trader Joe's a single origin. I seen
or
it.
They are buying out other companies, small chocolate makers. They're buying them.
Right. Exactly. But or like in Trader Joe's, I saw single origin bar that said just Uganda. So all of Uganda single origin, big bar still for like $1.87 US. And I'm thinking,
Right. How do you
yeah,
compete with that, right?
just because it's single origin doesn't mean that you're still taking advantage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. But that's a good
So
point. And
it's
then a customer who's maybe they went to a tasting once and now they see the single origin, they get excited and like, oh, it's only a few dollars too, you know? So that's
yeah,
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it is exactly. And but they're playing it. They're playing it like that. I think it's something that once again they're doing very calculating.
Yeah. And that's a good point too to bring about cost is it doesn't mean the more you spend on a bar, the better it's going to be. But there is a certain limit. Like it could only be so cheap before you have to start questioning where is this cacao coming from? What's happening behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
What's happening behind it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe there's not even enough cacao in that chocolate bar to be named chocolate.
Right.
That's the other challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now the like worries about cacao shortages and stuff. That's why I think you see a lot of commercial brands starting to push more milk chocolates or white chocolates and things that don't require so much cacao, right? That's another
Cacao.
way to
Yeah.
go around that. And do you
Mhm.
have any ideas or goals that you wish to share here in regards to where you want to see your business headed in the future, whether it's in Peru or Canada or wherever? What are you hoping for in the near future, 5, 10 years? Something like
Oh
that.
goodness.
There we go.
So I think what Aurelio and I are very much aligned with this, right? One of the things that we founded the company on is sustainability always. So sustainability, our goals is always sustainability for the farmers, sustainability for the communities, and sustainability for the environment. That's
Sorry,
very important for me.
just because sustainability is becoming a bit of a buzzword, just unpack it a little bit. What do you mean sustainable and in what ways?
So ways for the farmers to make enough of a living that they can actually live okay or comfortably from,
Mm,
right? Something that they can actually ways to pay them and make more money so that they can take care of their families and take care of their community. But
mm,
also and sustainable for the environment. So sustainable for the environment means a way that you're not depleting it. Something that's like regenerative. We work with a lot of farmers that are regenerative farming. We've been doing this for decades, and now the new buzzword, which I also don't like, is this new certification that's regenerative certification. Just more obstacles for
mm,
farmers that we are already working with that are already regenerative. But
mm,
now I need to prove to somebody that it is regenerative.
mm.
Oh, but they don't have a certification. I'm like, well,
Oh,
no, they can't afford a certification. So this
yeah.
is kind of like the things that, sorry, I'm getting on a tangent there,
No, it's okay.
but
Yeah, you are.
yeah, I
Yeah,
am.
but let
But
me add to what
that's
you said. Let me add to what you said. So the main idea here for us is that we want to promote Peruvian cacao
yeah,
as what it is. It's the most genetically diverse cacao in the world, and at the same time, we want to be the best partners for chocolate makers. We
Mm,
want to to tell the best stories to the chocolate makers so they can explain where their cacao is coming from and they can know every little detail about their communities and the
I
cacao
think
producers.
I think
That's
that's a
what
big part what
drives
you
us, you know?
yeah, that's what you said, the
Yeah.
stories. I think that's very important. I think that's something that'll shorten the divide. You know, you guys
yeah,
go there,
absolutely,
you share the stories with the makers, they share it with the customers. I think that's very
absolutely.
important. Yeah.
One of the things I always tell our customers is, and they know this if you know me, then you know this. I am basically like Aurelio and I talk probably 40 times a day. So it's very difficult for I'm willing to bet almost anybody, let's say in North America, that is getting their cacao from a distributor or somebody within North America. They're not like us in the sense that you can call me, I'm here. I'm in your backyard and I
Mm,
can literally pick up the phone and you are talking with the source and we're
mm,
there.
mm,
So we bridge that gap like you're mentioning. We've shortened it. Like
mm.
we're as close as you can get where you're going to get fast results. And how often is it when if you've ever dealt with Latin America, you call and it's like you don't get an answer. You email, you'll never get an email back. Like if you write an email, it just doesn't exist. It's the culture down there, right?
Yeah.
And when they say, we'll call you right back, it doesn't occur. So my partner and I have a very Western and European style of doing business, where it's like very quick communication, very transparent communication, and at the same time, we are in Peru, while simultaneously being in North America.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we bridge that gap. It's not like South America to us, if somebody's listening, it's not far away. We
Right.
are, it's all in the same. It's basically like being in your backyard.
I think that gives a lot of people a lot of reassurance, confidence and that
Mhm.
transparency. And I think that's incredible what you're doing. Definitely. Sounds like you guys
Yeah.
never sleep.
We don't sleep a
Yeah.
lot.
No.
This is just one of the business. Yeah, we don't. We're growing. We have ambitions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're both, we have ambitions for the company.
No, that's
So
amazing. Yeah. And you probably drink some Peruvian coffee to keep going, keep you up
Oh
and
yeah,
awake. Yeah.
believe it or not, I don't drink coffee.
Oh, really? Ah, okay, okay.
I love
I know,
coffee.
yeah. But yeah, I don't get, I sleep like 5 hours a day. I don't, I'm good. I
Wonderful.
don't need, I'm lucky. I don't need that much. That comes from my mom. My mom's full of energy at like
Yeah.
65, 67 or something like that.
Okay. Amazing. Okay, well, thank you guys. I think we'll end it here for today, even though I'm sure there's a million things we could talk about, but I really, really enjoyed the conversation. It's amazing the work that you guys are doing, and I hope more people start to hear about what you're doing. So thank you so much, Marco, Aurelio.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thanks,
Joseph. I
Joseph.
Appreciate
appreciate it.
it.
It was fun. Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you so
Yeah,
much for
Absolutely.
the opportunity.
maybe we'll do a part two one
Yeah.
day. It'll be nice.
Of
Oh, sounds
course.
good.
Okay,
Sounds
Take
great.
care.
all the best.
Okay.
Take care.
Take
Ciao.
care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Download the free Bean to Bar app to connect with incredible chocolate makers from around the world. Also, be sure to visit beantobarworld.com, your portal for all things fine chocolate, virtual tastings, free learning resources, research, and much more. Subscribe to the newsletter to stay in touch and donate to the free app and free resources here. Contact me for any chocolate related questions you may have.